Hey, what's happening, you guys? And welcome to the Proclivity Podcast. My name is Joel Cochran. I am your host, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Emily Rodella. Emily, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10, though, how great?
Right now, 9.
Ooh, that's a solid 9. It's a good day. Good day when you're living a 9, huh?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
great.
it is great. Well, you guys, we're happy that you guys joined us. As you know, here on the Proclivity Podcast, we like giving you tangible information. We don't go over your head. We go straight to your heart, straight to your brain. We want to be able to give you tangible stuff that you can apply to your life immediately. And that's what we like to do here. We also run a program. It's called the Proclivity Method. If you haven't heard about it, I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to let you hang on it. You can go to www.proclivity.co, not com, .co, and find out for yourself. But it's life-changing. Wouldn't you say, Emily?
It is, for sure. All jokes aside.
Yeah, you're a little biased, but that's okay. You guys, today what we're going to be talking about is a part of the Proclivity Pyramid. If you haven't listened to the episode of the Proclivity Pyramid, go check it out. I want to say it's in maybe the 60s, maybe. Guess? We're going to say guess.
That sounds right.
Real quick, Emily, the Proclivity Pyramid, from bottom to top, what is it?
Language, structure, metabolic flexibility, and movement.
That is what we have found to find ultimate and optimized health is in that manner, the base up. And today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about movement. Not only movement, but holistic movement. What is holistic movement? Well, you hang on, because we got a special guest today that's going to be talking about holistic movement, who is a professional in the field of holistic movement. And I'm going to give him a little introduction. So y'all buckle in. The Proclivity Podcast is taking off. Here we go. Today, we will be talking about holistic movement with our guest, Grant Thomas. Grant is a movement specialist that dances in the realms. Very important that you heard that. Dances in the realms of bodyweight, strength, rhythm, and various forms of play. His deep dive into movement began with chronic back pain at only the age of 19, which led him down an alternative path to physical training, mentality, and holistic health. Now, today, Grant empowers individuals to create their own movement legacy through Smooth Moves, an online fitness platform that focuses on foundational movement, practical strength, and skill development. You can find Grant in the park, crawling on the grass, spinning the ropes, and kicking the hacky sack. If you haven't seen him on the Insta, and we'll give you the Insta at the end, you got to check out this guy with a hacky sack. It's unreal. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Grant Thomas. Grant.
Thank you. I'm doing well, man. Appreciate the intro right there. Very holistic picture of what I do. So, yeah.
100%. You know what's really funny about this week is that I had a meeting, breakfast meeting, with a good friend of mine, Thomas Grant.
No way.
Emily was so confused, and understandably so. She was like, wait a second, wasn't that supposed to be a podcast? Or who are you meeting with again? What are the chances that I meet with Thomas Grant and then get on a podcast with Grant Thomas?
I mean, that's wild. And, you know, I think I need to meet this person because I've been getting confused for him for my entire life. You know, the classroom roll sheet has the last name first. And so I was called Thomas Grant pretty much every first day of school. And then when I was in Europe for a friend's wedding, his now wife is Spanish, and so they found her friends found me on Instagram and they all called me Thomas Grant. Like again, same sort of
Mm.
thing right there. So just a common mix up when you've got two first names or two last names, depending on how you look at it.
That's I mean, depending on how you look at it for sure. So listen, Thomas, if you're out there and you're listening, I mean, maybe Thomas got called Grant Thomas. I'm
I
Maybe.
going to
think
ask him now.
you gotta.
Well, because he calls himself T, like he just goes by T now. And maybe that's because he got tired of it. Like, my name is T. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. So one of the things I want to touch into straight out of the gates is that chronic back injury
Mm-hmm.
or illness or whatever you want to call it, that you got at age 19. This is really the catapult that got you into movement, strength, fitness, all of that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, if I were to really rewind things to when I view this whole thing starting was
Mm-hmm.
I never really had any issues physically growing up. And then I broke my leg playing football when I was basically 16 years old. At the ankle. So, that ankle joint, you don't have to know this in terms of biomechanics, but the ankle joint is really a pivotal, no pun intended, there, a
Mm.
pivotal point for your body. And, I just didn't rehab it well, as I imagine many 16-year-olds when they have something, they're like, oh, it's just going to heal, and just didn't really have the tools and the guidance to really facilitate fully recovering from that. And so I had great athletic career after that. And once I finished up with high school athletics, I decided I wasn't going to pursue college athletics, and I still wanted to be an athlete. But I only knew these few ways of exercising and lifting weights. And so I
Mm.
just lifted really irresponsibly. Yes, I was motivated to show up every day. Some would say, I would say I was really addicted to that, but just lifting a bunch of heavy weight, putting on a bunch of muscle mass in a short amount of time, and not really doing it responsibly, not really
Mm.
taking my my biomechanics and into account, and also listening to my body and really understanding what my body was asking for or what it needed at that point in time. So, yeah, at age 19, I ended up with chronic back pain, and I would say the with how quickly that happened, the biggest challenge for me was the mindset piece. So there was a ton of victim mentality with that. There was a lot of you don't understand me when it came to people trying to help me.
Mm.
And I really hadn't linked more of the mental side of how I was viewing this. It was more of like an overuse thing, and then just
Mm.
imbalances rather than like an acute particular injury. Um, but yeah, just not really able to view that as a massive opportunity. I started to slowly come out of that, and it took me about 10 years. So I'm 31 now. And I would say when things really started to make sense with mindset around that particular thing, the back pain, it was probably age 29.
Wow.
Of course, there was a coming out of that, and there was a continuous unraveling of those layers. So the mindset was shifting, the movement practice was shifting, and I never gave up on myself. I never gave up on my body. I never gave up on my practice. But there was a lot more resistance there
Mm-hmm.
than I imagine most people would want, and so gathered a lot of tips, tricks, and tools along the way to shift the mindset, and then ultimately through those shifts of mindset, and also bouncing that off of the shifts in my movement practice, I was able to cultivate something that worked really well for my body, and it's very much rooted in the uh, the day to day feeling good, feeling
Yeah.
capable, feeling strong, having fun while you're doing it, and also in the
Mm,
longevity piece. So as much as this stuff is a creation that is an amalgamation from my experience, I very much view that approach to movement as something that anybody can really benefit from, if they're willing to put their mind and body towards it.
mm. And your story, I'm sure, resonates with certain people out there in terms of one, sports, two, your average fitness routine, what we see in globo gyms or bodybuilding or strength training, and not really understanding the mechanics, not maybe even more importantly, not understanding what your body actually needs or is asking for. We find with a lot of our clientele very out of tune with their body's signals, right? I know for a long time, this is an example that I use, and Emily has examples as well. But I was gluten intolerant, okay, and probably for 6 years, gluten intolerant. I would have diarrhea 3 to 4 times a week, and I'll just be like, this is
Mm-hmm.
what it is. Maybe it was just this. Maybe it was just that, right? Whatever. Not tuning into my body at all. So it's inflamed. It doesn't feel good. My joints are aching, so on and so forth. But I just ignored it. And it wasn't until I started getting in tune with my body. It's like, wait a second. Now at this point, very in tune with my body of what my movement practice needs to be, what my food is, what my feelings are around certain individuals or situations, and being able to tune into that and go, what's going on here? My body's telling me something. And so you went from sports, which is very performance related, into the fitness realm, into wait a second, there's a different way here. And so I'm curious in connecting to our listeners, how do you personally connect with fitness and exercise? What does fitness and exercise look like in our society right now? We've all lived through it, but how do you see it right now? And is it beneficial the way that our fitness and exercise world and industry is painting it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I from more of a relational aspect, I find every avenue of fitness to be of benefit, at least for perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I never want to demonize something or call something bad because, in the right context, some of these things can be really beneficial.
Sure.
Um, but from, let's say, if we start from a lifestyle perspective, um, it's usually segmented into a certain period of time. So let's say 30 minutes to an hour and a half, 2 hours, or even 3 hours, right?
Mm,
Where you have this block and, hey, this is when I get my movement in. And so that right there immediately separates it from, let's say, lifestyle. And if it's possible in those 2, 3 hours that you could be doing some things that are more applicable towards your life, but vast majority of people are looking at fitness as maybe an escape, maybe something that they get chemicals going in their body and that helps them feel better. But is this helping them become better movers? Is this essentially opening up more capability and possibility in their lives? Um, from that perspective, when you're just siloing it in your mind and also on your
mm,
schedule to this one period of time, that starts to separate it. We can also look at things from a biomechanical perspective where, there's a lot of isolation. Let's say we can just look at any sort of gym, right? Any sort of gym is going to have these isolated machines for particular areas of the body. And that right there, again, is disconnected. Um, again, not saying that isolated movements are bad. There's
mm-hmm.
absolutely a place for
Mhm.
them. But if we are separating these pieces of our body, oh, I'm doing chest and tries today, or I'm doing, of course we can have these focuses, but when we start to strip the anatomical stuff and create separation, It's really all just made up. It's just a map for us to better understand it. Ultimately, our organism works as a whole. Our body works as a
Mm,
whole. So,
mm-hmm.
um, there's those pieces right there, and then there's I would say there's an application and an integration challenge that a lot of people experience. So one, they don't really know what they're applying their fitness and exercise or their training to.
Mm,
They might not even have something. Um, and that's a simple frame too. It's like, oh, I just want to be more capable in my life. Cool. There's plenty of things we can do for that. But a lot of times we see exercises that don't really match up with what people's goals might be. So you have like maybe a cookie cutter way or a few particular ways of approaching
mm-hmm.
fitness. And well, I'm a great example of, hey, that didn't work for me. And so I had to
Sure.
really find a new path and really create a new path. And going back to that, um, what you said earlier about building your own and creating your own movement legacy, that's really what it is.
Mm,
You get to pull from everything that's worked for you and everything that hasn't worked for you, and what you like and what you don't like, what you want to get better at, all this stuff, and create something that makes sense for you. And so to circle back to your question, I think we are absolutely at this point where people need to start taking more responsibility for their movement. And that starts with tuning into yourself and better understanding what you want to do with your movement. If I recognize that, hey, I really enjoy playing hacky sack, I love dance, I love getting down on the ground and crawling and doing some more acrobatic stuff. Um, I look at some of these aspects that I love to do. Well, how do I train with more structure to support these things that I want to do with my body? So that's my first question for anybody really
mm,
is like, okay, what's your practice and like what are you applying it to? Like
mm-hmm.
what's I don't want to say like what's the goal, but like what do you want to put this work into process with, right? And
Mm,
that's a great place to have something to work for. So if staying fit for the sake of staying fit without really much deeper analysis on what that means is your
yeah.
goal, chances are that motivation is going to wane pretty quickly.
Mm, mm-hmm. Well, you said something there that really grabbed my attention, and Emily, feel free to butt in any point here. Movement legacy. Ooh, man, that really got my attention, right? You're thinking about a legacy, and a legacy is a multitude of different events throughout a lifetime that creates a legacy. And how are you trying to live that legacy? What are you literally trying to create so that when you die, somebody's like, oh, the legacy of Emily was, right? And when it comes to fitness and movement, creating a movement legacy, what does that look like and how do you create it?
I'd say that what it looks like is style. Like it's an aura, it's a presence thing. How one holds their body, how they move their body, and
Mm,
just going to throw this in there as well. The legacy piece, whether you want to go into the epigenetics aspects of things or simply mirror neurons, the way you move is going to be supportive of, let's say, your offspring as well. So there's a legacy piece right there where um, how you move is going to impact the people that you are raising or that you are around. So be a good example with your
mm,
movement, and you're going to probably have a healthier family line right there. Um,
mm-hmm,
and so, how to go about cultivating that is, you know, I love to go back to your pyramid right there, just to throw that into the mix right there. I think the language piece, really understanding what like movement is to you or like fitness is to you. It's going to be different for every individual, but if you can find some language that supports action and
mm-hmm,
creativity in
mm-hmm.
your movement practice, that right there is already a great way to spur into creating that own legacy, your own style of movement. Um, going on to structure right there, one of the things that's been incredibly beneficial for me and the people that I work with is putting things into categories to some extent. Again, just giving yourself some structure. So the three areas that I like to focus on with my clients and the people in the smooth community is strength, recovery, and skill. So from a strength perspective, I look at this as something that is going to be effective in building strength both long term and in the moment. So I'm feeling stronger after this workout. This is going to help me feel stronger today, and long term. So that's the effective piece. And usually like to focus on stuff that's pretty time efficient as well. So something that's able to fit into your schedule and you're able to show up for with presence is a massive piece right there. Uh, an easy way to do that, body weight. Just make it incredibly simple for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to get creative with your body weight and then you add and implement, you'll notice that creativity translate. So the example there would be like, okay, I can do some body weight stuff. I can do some pressing motions and pulling motions with my body or with a band or something like that, and then immediately translate those same movements to something with a kettlebell, right? And I'm not going to say it's going
Mm.
to be perfect right off the bat, but you're going to have that creativity flowing because limitation in, let's say, what you're able to do also allows you to really use that creativity to find new ways to do things. Another piece that I just didn't focus anything on growing up was recovery. I think there's
Mm.
a sure, we got the flexibility and the mobility, but then there's just the permission to recover. Hey, you know what? I'm going to recover today. Today's a rest day, but not that
Mm.
typical rest day where I sit on the couch and I eat that bag of chips. I'm sitting on the floor. I'm doing some shin box switches. I'm breathing. I have some things in my arsenal that I can continue to get to know my body better. And that right there, again, circling back to the legacy, circling back to the style, is my movement practice allowing me to get to know myself better, get to know my body better.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
once that is there, you're really able to start to speak your body's language and facilitate growth through there. So recovery piece right there, slowing down,
Yeah.
making this more receptive, getting into your breath, and then having a few particular things to focus on there, I think is really key. And then the last piece, which I think, you know, well, I know the vast majority of the modern population suffers from a lack of attention span or just a really short attention span. So the way to, let's say, cultivate a better attention span or focus in your life is essentially giving your body and giving your brain problems that it cares about. And usually those aren't going to be the problems that it's like so far out there that I can't achieve. It's usually just adding some level of stress to it, right? So maybe it's working in a different cadence. Maybe it's focusing on balance. Maybe it's doing something in a
Mm.
pattern or connecting movements that's challenging for your body, challenging for your brain. And that's the big piece with attention. We got to care about it. Our brain's got to care about it. And the ability to have an expression for our attention. We deal with laziness and we deal with anxiousness, and those right there are essentially opposite sides of a particular spectrum right
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from a laziness perspective, I'm not stressing my brain enough. I'm not giving it problems it cares about. Maybe one day, adding 5 pounds to my bench press, adding 10 pounds to my bench press was a problem that my brain cared about. And here I am 10 years later doing the same shit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard for me to show up to. It's just hard for me to show up to. It's boring. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why don't I love this anymore? Well, you solved that problem. Your brain doesn't find it interesting anymore. So let's give it something else. And this again is where the creativity and the play comes into, well, play right there. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've found that anxious energy is the same thing. If I'm really anxious, like I've got this anxious energy to me, well, man, getting my juggling balls out and juggling those for 5 minutes, getting in some different positions while I juggle, working on that right there. that helps me feel productive when I'm lazy, and that helps me feel calm when I'm anxious. And so we have these
Mm-hmm.
problems, let's say, that people are dealing with on a consistent basis. And ultimately, I just view it as not, the prototypical approach to, let's say, laziness is this like hard self discipline. You just got to break through the wall and all this. And this is one of
Mm-hmm.
those situations where it's like, well, like, have you looked around? Is there a door that allows you to walk directly through that wall? I just think we need to be
Mm-hmm.
more creative. So that self discipline piece is totally part of the laziness puzzle and staying motivated. The other piece is making it fun, making it something to pay attention to. And so I think a lot of times when we talk about consistency, we're missing that key piece right there. Just make it interesting.
Hmm.
I mean, you're hitting something, huge here. And Emily, I want to ask you a question here in just a moment. One of the things that I recognize of running a gym for 7 years is I literally was inside a gym for 8 to 10 hours a day. And still, could be difficult for me to walk outside of my office and onto, I mean, it was literally open a door, I was on a gym floor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was that simple. Yet when it was the same thing every single day, right? I found it like you were talking about. My brain was like, yeah, okay. What, you're going to try to go chase another PR, right? And after pushing so hard, I get closer and closer to my genetic potential where it's just like, unless I'm going to start supplementing steroids, right? Like I'm not going to get past these PRs. So now it's like, oh, I just get to this and I get close again and I go back down. I get close. Okay, I get 5 bar muscle ups instead of, 4, okay, right. And what I have found is that for myself and for other people, we start creating an identity, right? We put in all
Mm.
those reps. Like you said, the brain kind of goes, okay, well, and what? And now we go, I'm just not so interested. I just need to do it, right? I have to push myself through, and then when I don't do it, then I start questioning like, oh man, here I am again, not doing the work. This is my problem. Like I get started and then I'm not interested anymore. I lose interest. And then all of a sudden I fall off. And what I found for myself, one is when I got out of the gym, I moved to an identity of, you know what? I move every day. It's what I do and it's what my body wants to do. And I started finding interesting ways to move, whether that was walking, breathing, playing, Olympic lifting, bodybuilding, holistic more movements, right? Animal movements, cartwheels, backflips, right? Any of the different things. And I found that I looked forward to the next day. And I looked
Mm-hmm.
forward to the next day because I'm like, well, what am I going to do today? Like, well, how can I change it? How can I vary it? Instead of it being structured here in the very CrossFit world of like, here's the WOD, you have to do it as is. And if you don't do it as is, that means it's not RX. So now I'm put into the box of like, wow, I want that RX. So now I got to do exactly as it's been told and said, which can be a movement and a motivator. But after working in the gym for 6 years, I also noticed that there was very little change in people in terms
Mm.
of their physical bodies and also their performance. It's like they stagnated. And again, to my own personal experience, and Emily, I want to come to yours. Um, After I got out of the gym and I allowed myself to go like this, open up, and I shifted that identity of it doesn't have to be high intensity. Some days maybe it is going to be a 2 hour run. Some days maybe it is going to be a 155-pound snatch. But many of the days, it's like, oh, cool. I'm going to walk and breathe for 45 minutes. That's my movement practice today. And it worked. And my body rewarded me. Inflammation went down. Body fat went down. Skeletal muscle mass stayed the same. And I went, oh, wow, this is way easier than I thought it would be. Yet this is years and years and years of practice. And to your point of what you're doing, Grant, is that you're being a coach to help people build that movement legacy through holistic movement much quicker than them trying to figure it out themselves or put themselves in boxes of, well, I tried CrossFit, it didn't work, so now I'm going to do, spin, and then that didn't really work, so then I'm going to do yoga, and that didn't really work, and this, it didn't work. Well, of course it worked. Yet, were you creating a movement legacy through holistic movement? And so, Emily, I want to ask you, in the same regards, you had a child 2 years ago. How did that shift your identity and your movement in terms of what Grant's talking about?
Yeah, you touched on so many good points, Grant. And specifically, I tend to think back to the moms, right? We get a lot of clients who are mothers or business owners who don't have a lot of time, and perhaps things don't go according to plan. So the two things that hit home for me that you mentioned were, are you in touch with your body? Because one, having a baby, you can't go back to CrossFit 6 days a week right after. Sorry. Like I was sad about that. Right. And I didn't know how fast I would be able to get back to my usual movement. And I only foresaw, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to take it easy getting back to it. And then I didn't even think about the time aspect. So that forced me to get creative. So there's two things for me, feeling and creative. And so for feeling, I would wake up some days not getting sleep, not feeling great. Like, hey, I'm going to sleep in today. I'm not going to get my workout in the morning before my son wakes up. That was hard for me mentally. And I know for many other mothers and people, hard chargers out there, right? And so feeling my body like, either I'm not going to work out or I'm going to do something different. And that involves some creativity too. So there goes into the creativity aspect of, okay, so if I'm not going to do my CrossFit workout or whatever it is, I'm not going to go to my spin class, what can I still do to move my body? And so for me, it's getting creative and being like, oh, what movements can I do today that feel good? Can I string those together, right? Can I go do that for 15 minutes, right? And letting go of the expectation that my workout or movement has to look a certain way. And I know that a lot of other people think, oh, well, I didn't get a workout if I didn't go to my CrossFit class or my whatever class, or if it's not an hour long, right? Yet this is something I come back to with myself and with client time and time again. It's like, no, you can do something for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. It's just a matter of getting creative. And so I find that to be a challenging part for people often. So my question for you would be, what's your recommendation in having people gain the confidence or gaining some more creativity for themselves?
Yeah, for sure. I would say what both of you had mentioned is really that identity piece right there. Starting with let's say the language or the mindset piece around that identity is holding you back for sure. If you like, I can talk about all the things I identified as. I identified as a bodybuilder. I identified as an athlete. I identified as, let's say, a yogi. I identified as, person who just does kettlebells, and then, I think there is some more of these holistic identities too of like, I'm a mover, right? But even that, as somebody that, has dedicated really my life and my craft towards this, that can be like a crutch in ways as well too, right? So, and limiting. So, identity is something that is incredibly powerful in terms of, creating some story around that, and that can be really helpful for you. So getting clarity on what that identity is, and like I said, what that, what fitness means to you, I think is a better way to look at that, where it's not putting it on you as the identity, but what is that is going to serve you. The other thing, I mean, there's a few different ways to really look at creativity, and I know this stuff, like the other piece of this is like, you just got to suck at stuff. You just do. Like, I mean, get over the fact that, you were good at this. That's not what you're focusing on. You're focusing on something else here, and you're going to suck at it. And so that identity of the athlete or somebody that's good at all things right there, that is an easy way to get bored and frustrated right there. Accept failure as inevitability. Like, it's just going to happen. And so is success. Stick with it long enough and you're going to see some success. I would say really get your hands involved and your feet involved. First and foremost, your hands and your eyes. Like, this is how we interact with the world. So you want to make things more fascinating. You want to make things more interesting for your brain. It's a hack. That's it, right? Get on your hands, crawl around, feel the ground against your hands, and use your eyes. So that could simply be, picking up some juggling balls. Easy thing, easy thing to learn. Like, I'll send you a video. It's very easy. Hacky sack, I would say, is like a lot harder, a lot harder. And that is one where once you build up that I'm gonna suck muscle, that's a good one to hop into. But
Yes.
yeah, I would say just get used to trying new things. If it's once a week, right? If you really have this regiment of something that has worked for you for years and it feels like it's getting stale, or it's just something's not right there, go out on a short limb here. I'm not saying change everything, but see if you can introduce some different things. So if I were to reflect on what was helpful for me, I started taking some yoga classes. That was a completely different energy than what I was doing at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, there's aspects of what I do now with Smooth that pull on a lot of that from yoga. Just again, more of a holistic and practical approach to movement. So, yeah, I mean, those are a few things that come to mind right off the bat. But I hope that answers your question, Emily.
Yeah, thank you. And just getting creative in all sorts of different ways of whether you don't have any equipment, you aren't able to because you're recovering from something, or you have an injury, or you're in your hotel room, right? Finding different movements. And I like that, like trying different classes out, like yoga or Pilates or something else. So you start gaining more tools in your toolbox. So you're like, oh, I can do that move that I did in class the other day.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I think of.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the class thing, you just start to build more of a vocabulary. And, one of the things I really strive to focus on with Smooth is education through action or practice. And so you can go out there and you can try and learn a bunch of stuff like through books and whatnot, but that's literally like, you got to collect data points with your experience. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you really do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to show you that basically all this stuff is the same. um, Everybody I talk to that has had like a roundabout journey with movement, they circle back and they say, yeah, we can talk about these different modalities. We can talk about this rule versus this
Mm-hmm.
rule, the biomechanics of all this. Basically, what it comes down to is just connecting with your body and understanding how to, connect with it, move stuff with it, and you'll be able to figure out more and more as long as you collect more data points. Of course, there's shortcuts and there's protocols to really facilitate that. I
Yeah.
think a couple of the things that came to mind while we were talking about this is getting outside. If you like to do pull-ups or something, or rows, like, you can grab a tree horizontally and do your rows there. You can find a branch overhead and do some pull-ups there. You can crawl on the grass. All this stuff is very grounding and
Mm-hmm.
gets you into your experience. And I think that's the piece right here, that just a big nugget that's been helpful for me. If anybody's listening to this that is really into biomechanics, which is like a interesting realm of fitness right now, very useful and also incredibly like mentally debilitating at times.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of rules, a lot of different ideologies, and it'll make you second guess a lot of things, right? And so there's the biomechanical aspect of things. You think of this as more of like the shapes and the cues and the positions and more, let's say, these rules and this heavy structure. And then there's this embodiment piece to movement. And when we really use that word, we separate it, right? We have body and we have ment, and that is like body mind essentially. And so being able to get into your body mind, the best way for me to describe that is from more of like a primal or animal perspective. This is where you are essentially able to access movement from a place that is more natural and it doesn't require you to think about these particular things. Again, just like the muscular system, I know we have these muscles, there's different
Mm-hmm.
striations in different directions. All of it's made up, so we have a way to talk about it. It's just like language, right? And so, we have these different movements and these different cues and these different positions that are more optimal than others. But when I get down on the ground and I say, hey, I'm going to do a cat crawl. Okay, which cat do I want to be? Oh, I want to be a jaguar. Oh, okay. How's that jaguar moving through its shoulders and its torso? How
Mm.
low is that jaguar to the ground? What is the jaguar looking down on the ground with bad posture, or is the jaguar looking around both to stay safe and to eat? Right. So you get into more of these animalistic tendencies
Mm-hmm.
with your movements, and you start to embody your movement and you start to find your own style and feel for it. And so that's the other thing I encourage people to get into. I mean, I think music is an amazing way to do this as well, just with dance and throwing on some music, playing around with different styles of music, and opening up that body in ways that it
Mm-hmm.
has, let's say, I don't want to say never, but uh, it's been a long time since some human bodies have felt those particular positions or
Yeah.
shapes or momentum and transferring weight from one side to the
Mm-hmm.
other. And so, those are a few things. If you're, I've, everything I've covered today, I hope and I imagine it's going to serve people at different
Mm-hmm.
parts along their journey. That
Yeah.
nugget right there has really served me the last couple of years. Biomechanics and embodiment,
Yes.
really want to make sure that we're able to honor both and find a
Mm.
way to integrate them.
Mm. Mm. And the thing that I wrote down here, we talked a lot, and one of the things that we'll say on the Proclivity podcast is woo woo, right? Okay, Grant just got some woo woo stuff. Okay, because we got some hard chargers that are like, did he just say he was crawling? Okay, on the ground. All right, acting like a cat. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He talked about the embodiment. And guess what, hard charger? You embody being a CEO, right? How does a CEO sit at the head of the table
Mm,
when it comes to a meeting? You know how you sit. So all Grant is saying is, what if we embodied different characteristics and identities? How would that shift the body? Right. And I help people through language of going, what does it, when you say this sentence and you feel this way, how do you envision yourself? The embodiment of acting like a king or a queen or civilized or strong. What does a strong person look like? No, what do you look like as a strong person? Right now we start embodying it and we start seeing it. And the reason I'm bringing this back, you guys, is bringing it to the point of play. See, as kids, we had no preconceived ideas of what we were supposed to be in society. So we just played. We should go to a playground and do what Grant's talking about. Can you crawl up the chains, right? As an adult, try to watch somebody go up something unstable, and they're all over the place. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. That's just this and that. Why couldn't you do that, right? We need to express ourselves more and more in different areas of movement, both biomechanically and also what Grant's talking about in the embodiment of it, of movement, of play, throwing a frisbee. I don't know how many people that I've looked at the gym, like, man, the person's looks really fit. And they would go to throw a ball, do a cartwheel, try to catch a frisbee, right? And it's just like they feel like the frisbee's going to hit them in the face. Ugh, right? And it's like, whoa, we're missing something here. We're too linear. We're too straight. Where's the expression? Because if we took everything away, guys, no more CrossFit, no more classes, no more weights, no more nothing, where would you be left? Out in the field, out in the forest, out in the desert. How would your body move? There's no more worrying about eccentric, concentric movements. It's the ability to be able to have your body run, jump over things, climb up things quickly, hold on to things. And this is really where I feel you're touching, Grant, and doing where your work is so empowering, is you do have such a broad background that when it comes to this holistic movement, being able to teach people that you got a lot more than you think that you have. And so, I want to bring this to, I want to recap this. If we have listeners who've made this far, who've gone, some of this is like way over my head. Some of this I'm really catching on to. And some of this I'm still curious about. When it comes to holistic movement and really varying things, getting past that stuck point or that repetition or feeling like exercise is getting boring again, what are the 3 things you suggest to start moving into a more holistic movement practice?
Mm, mm. Well, let's see. That's a great question right there. Um, so I would say the piece right there that we talked about earlier, and this takes sitting down and a little bit more planning, or at least setting your sights, is really understanding what your fitness is for, right? And if you decide that your fitness is for simply staying fit, right? Um, I encourage you to ask a few questions after that and dig a bit deeper into what that means to you, right? For me, just some context as an example, right? And we're all getting there. We're all inching towards death every single day, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking about longevity, I'm also talking about the period, a longevity of enjoyment in my life as well, right? And so if that is something that um, interests you, then this is what I would recommend, right? Is getting that clarity on what your movement practice means to you. Uh, the other thing is keeping things really simple with the structure. It doesn't need to be this thing that you have to slam your head against the door and structure out all these different modalities and whatnot. I would say start with one thing that is really challenging for you and find a way to show up for 2, 3 times a week for it, right? You can keep your strength practice there. Like I said, I very much encourage and invite everybody to participate in some form of recovery practice. And if you don't know what that looks like, then hit me up because I got
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a plenty of ways to make this stuff fun and interesting, right? Recovery does not have to be just your typical stretching. And this is somebody that's like, come out of a lot of injuries and whatnot. And so, again, there's plenty of ways to get creative with that recovery piece. And then going back to what I said earlier, that one thing that you pick, maybe it's getting down on the ground and crawling. Really simple
Mm-hmm.
movement right there. Really simple movement. Don't even have to do some of the woo-woo stuff I was talking about. Just getting down on all fours and crawling. Um, this could be, this could be, like I said, another one. Great recommendation for anybody just juggling, like getting
Mm-hmm.
used to using your hands and making those active, right? Um, Going on a walk, whatever it may be, those things, incorporating them in your day in some sort of skill practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is my opportunity to do something that is a little out of the ordinary for me, and I know it's going to provide me benefit. And even if I don't, I just kind of fake it and I keep trusting it, and eventually it's going to prove to you that that's the case right there. Um, the last piece right there, I think, is just finding ways to insert more play into your day, and this comes from a more holistic perspective. So, um, you were talking earlier about the embodiment of the CEO, right?
Yes.
Embodiment is a skill. Sure, you could have that specified to embodiment of a CEO as a skill, right? Or embodiment of a cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I bring this up because if we have this skill of embodiment, or we have this skill of transitioning weight in our body, just to bring it back to movement right there, that relates to all other aspects of your life, And I think
Mm-hmm.
this is the piece where people get hung up on it. And there's, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the attention span or the focus to spend on these
Mm-hmm.
things because I don't see the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose is felt. Like it's something that's going to integrate with your life and you're going to see those connections there, but you have to give it a chance because it's just not something you've experienced before, so you can't talk about it in a way so definitively. So
Mm-hmm.
drop the ego and really give yourself an opportunity to feel into that playful side of yourself. And that right there, again, knowing, just trying to trust that it's going to relate back to your life and, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
your performance, right?
Yes.
This is something that's been really fun for me is I do some different drills and I do some different movements that are more structured, and then I have some form of play to apply them to. And then I have this interesting dance between the structure here and then the play, and both are giving each other context. It's not like uh, if I just stick with my structured practice, I would get better at this stuff. I need to have some context of play here. So, that's really what I'd recommend for people right there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure if people had more specific needs on what they're dealing with, whether they're leaning more that lazy person or that person that's like super hard charging, there's different approaches for each
Yeah.
individual. But again, usually it involves just switching things up.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Ah, man, Grant, so good to be able to have this perspective. And you guys, this is one of the reasons uh, that we have the Proclivity podcast is to get your mind outside of the box. And Grant, you did an incredible job today of being able to expand both my mind, Emily's mind, and our listeners' minds when it comes to movement, because there is a reason that we say movement and not exercise and not fitness, movement at the top of our pyramid, because movement is anywhere and everywhere, guys, and can be implied in so many different ways. And if you're sitting here like, gosh, this seems way over my head, reach out to Grant. Okay. Reach out to us. We'll talk to you about it. Right. Yet, one of the things that we believe in our business and in life is pay the pros. We've dedicated our lives to this. You can go ahead, like Grant said, go ahead and start studying literature and everything else along with your full-time job, being a dad, a mom, and everything else, and try to squeeze that in. Or you can pay the pros who have dedicated their lives to it, and you get a fast track to being able to get to the goal that you want to get to. So, Grant, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Easiest way to find me is my Instagram. I've got two. It's at Grant S. Thomas. And then the other Instagram is at Smoove, SMOOV, Smoove Moves. And you can also hop on YouTube, use that same tag right there. That's going to unlock a realm of interesting stuff for you to work on, and
Yes.
highly encourage you to check out the YouTube stuff. And yeah, if this structure to play and more enjoyment in your practice interests you, go ahead and hit that link in the bio, and that'll give you the means to either sign up or book a call with me and see if this is a good fit for you. And just to add one last thing here, based on what you said there, Joel,
Mm-hmm.
about thinking outside of the box. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about the movement that I practice is that there are some angles, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what it comes down to is spears and spirals. And so when we look at things like, if we have the box there, um, I would think of another way of phrasing, look outside the box or think outside the box is expand your movement sphere, or expand your sphere. So
Mm.
this goes into really your ability to move in all three dimensions and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also living in a world, if you believe in it, that the world is a sphere, and
Mm-hmm.
that gravity works in these ways that are very spherical. And so um, that's an out there thing to say right here, but think about expanding your sphere. And that means trying new things, whether that be movement, whether that be,
Mm,
some different practices with art, whatever. That sphere is going to continue to expand around you rather than in these compartmentalized areas. I really believe that as we start to expand in one area, it feeds all those other areas. And so you'll
mm-hmm.
continue to grow that sphere. And yeah, and if you want to get woo woo about it, you can also view it as your aura. So,
Oh
you're,
yeah.
you're diversified, you're a ball of light, and you're just, again, you have a great sense of presence and style to you because you've expanded that sphere. So that's what I'll finish this on.
I love it, man. I love
Like
it.
it. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Emily, anything else from you?
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Love all the points you brought up and something for anyone to think about.
Yeah.
Anything that you talked about today, there's something for everyone. So thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. This is always great to chat about this stuff.
Love it. Love it. You guys, if you liked what you listened today, like the podcast, share it, write a review. We would love that as we continue to grow as a business and getting this information out there. The more you do that, the more it gets out to other ears. We really appreciate you guys coming and tuning in. Grant, thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge today. Guys, if you are interested in learning more, check out Grant. Incredible guy. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you once again. And Emily, until we meet again,
Best day ever.